Hello everyone, welcome to our Reading Comprehension introduction video brought to you by Learning Made Easy team, a team of IIM grads in association with a relearning partner GTCUBE.com. In this video, we will discuss and help you to handle reading comprehension questions in your exam. We'll talk about how to prepare for that so that you can improve your performance and do well in your exams. So if you are watching this video in YouTube channel, do check out full-length courses available for free at gtcube.com/store. So let's get started. So first, what is a reading comprehension question, right? I guess most of you already know it. Just a simple example to show. So let's say that you will be given a piece of text to read, like how you see here. We have taken a very small example. And then there will be some questions that will be asked based on that text, right? So that's basically that you read a piece of text, comprehend it, that's basically understanding it, and then answer the questions that are being asked. I think the central point in the first paragraph is that economic benefits of Olympic Games. So and then you'll have options, you have to select the correct answer that would be, answering the given question. So to crack a reading comprehension question, there are two important elements, our skills, whatever the way we look at. The first and foremost is reading and comprehending the passage, right? So you'll be given a piece of text. You have to read it and understand it properly to actually answer the questions. The complexity in this element is this, that the passage could be of any length, right? So you will see short passages, you will see really long passages. It depends on the exam, the passage specifically. It could be 300 words, it could be 700 words, 500 words. Generally, you will see 300 to 500 words typically, but you never know. So in an ideal world, most of us would be able to perform really well in reading comprehension questions if we are given unlimited time to reread the text as much as we can so that we can understand it. But that's not the situation we would see in the real exam, right? We will have limited time. You're supposed to read it faster, understand things better, and answer the questions. The other element of it is also about the topic, right? So you'll see the passage could be from a science and technology topic, or business, economics, history, arts, literature. Depending on what's your comfort zone, you will be able to read certain set of passages with much better comfort, to understand, read it quicker compared to topics which you have no clue about, which you are not, used to read. You'll find it really difficult to understand, read faster. The other element is also about the language difficulty. Sometimes the passage could have actually complex English being used. It's about the length of the sentences, about the words that are used. Depending on how good you understand the words, you can actually understand the passage, or maybe you'll struggle to understand the passage. So the point I'm trying to say is this: the important element of cracking a RC question is that you should be able to read and comprehend the passage. And the complexity in this would be coming from the dimensions like the length, depending on how long it is, the topic that is being talked about, is it in your comfort zone or not, are you used to read topics like this, and also the difficulty of the language being used, right? So we should be prepared, we should try to improve our skills on these elements, that I should be able to be handling shorter and longer passages with ease, should have a diverse, topics under my comfort area. That comes through practice. And also you should be having a good vocabulary, or at least should be able to make sense of, words based on the context, and skim through the content. So that's how you'll handle the difficulty part. Once you have read it, you understood the passage properly, the second element, the second skill that you need to have is understanding the given questions, right, and selecting the correct option, right? You might be able to read the passage, you understand everything very clearly, but still does not mean that it translates to getting the correct answers, right? So there are multiple type of questions that would be posed in a reading comprehension. We'll talk about the categories or the types of questions in another video. You can find that in our channel. Other element is that you should be able to eliminate the options, right? So if you are given 4 or 5 options, there will be one correct answer. There will be, sometimes you might have multiple correct answers. Whatever it is, you should be able to eliminate the wrong options and there are traps that would be set which make you feel that those are the right answers, but they're indeed the wrong answers. You have to be very careful to eliminate the wrong ones. We also have another video talking about the potential traps, so that you can be a bit more careful and avoid those traps when you actually try to attempt these questions. And finally, the most important element that decides your score is selecting the correct option, right? It's not possible to select the correct option without reading and comprehending the passage and understanding the question and selecting the correct option by eliminating the wrong ones, right? Unless you're super lucky and you might get it by chance, right? But it won't last long. The most probable and solid way to crack the question is that you read the passage, understand it, and then understand the question and select the correct option by eliminating the wrong options. So let's get started with the sample question. What we'll suggest is pause the video, right? You'll see the passage till this part. We have 2 paragraphs, right? Then we have a question following it. You read the passage, try to understand it, then select the answer. Pause the video so that you'll get time to read it. Don't have a time limit right now, that's completely fine. Mark your answer, then continue the video where we will discuss this in depth. So I hope you have passed the video, you have read the text, you have answered the question. Now let's try to discuss this. So what we tried to do with this passage, we have intentionally picked slightly complex thing and a topic which we are not very used to read. It's more on the philosophy, talking about human nature and stuff. So let's deep dive into the text first to read and understand it, and then let's look at the question and see what could be the potential answer, right? So every age has its pet contradictions. So different time frames, 1900s, 1800s, different generations, you'll have some contradictions happening at that time with philosophies and theories. So a few decades back, we used to accept Marx and Freud together, then wonder, like the chameleon on the turkey carpet, why life was so confusing, right? So they're talking about an example a few years back where the different philosophies were existing, people were accepting it, and then people are still asking a bigger question about life, that why is life so confusing. Today there is similar trouble over the question whether there is or is not something called human nature. So the author has explained this example about how few decades back, right, different ideologies or theories, philosophies were existing, and that similar behavior we are seeing again now. And the topic that the author picked for this is that human nature, there are 2 different theories or multiple theories which are contradicting, but they're still existing. So let's try to understand what those theories are. On the one hand, there has been an explosion of animal behavior studies. Comparisons between animals and men have become immensely popular, right? So the author says, on one hand, there have been a lot of studies happening on animal behavior, and basically we also would have heard about this, where like this is human nature, like humans are social beings, or we try to look at other animals of similar families, apes or anything, or maybe animals as in general, and then justify human behavior, saying that we behave so and so because that is human nature, that's human behavior, that's how we are bound to behave, right? So people use evidence from animals to decide whether man is naturally aggressive or naturally territorial, or even whether he has an aggressive or territorial instinct, right? Just continuing with the same point which I was discussing. Moreover, we are still much influenced by Freudian psychology, which depends on the notion of instinct, right? So this is all then I see on the other hand, so that's like taking to the other argument of a different philosophy. But if you just summarize this one philosophy, it's basically talking about people who believe that animal behavior, and human behavior is sort of similar to some other animals, or in general as a whole animal world. So naturally aggressive, naturally territorial. So we have instincts, we have something that's passed down to humans which we can't do much about, and that's why we behave in so and so patterns. On the other hand, right, many still hold what may be called the blank paper view. This is the other argument, the other contradicting philosophy. The man is a creature entirely without instincts, So this theory, blank paper view, says that man is a creature entirely without any instincts. So do existentialist philosophers. So if you don't know what existentialist philosophy is, I mean, just try to, sometimes it's very much possible that you don't get things which you really know. So we just have to try to guess things and sort of, skip it, or try to just make a intelligent guess based on how things are going. But generally the existentialism philosophy basically says that humans are, born without any instincts per se. They have free will. They develop themselves, their thoughts, whatever a particular person behavior and all comes from his own decisions throughout his life based on what he has undergone and what he has seen. There's nothing like human by default is born with something like this. That's why the behavior is so and so. So the existentialism basically argues that there's nothing like instinct or anything. Humans are born with zero. People experience different things, so they decide things on their own and they behave in particular pattern based on what they've undergone or what they've believed or what they've built. So it's something similar to the blank paper view basically. That's why we get to see both, that's an intelligence guess you do, like so do existentialist philosophers. And that's like basically saying that the blank paper view goes along with the existentialist philosophers. If man has no instincts, all comparison with animals must be irrelevant, right? So both these simple party lines have somewhat eroded over time, but both are extremely influential. So this is basically saying that there are two arguments and they are still influential. So now the author continues talking about the blank paper view in the next paragraph. According to the blank paper view, man is entirely the product of his culture. So that's like saying that man is born as zero, it's a blank paper. Whatever he is, evolved into, every human being basically is product of his or her culture. He starts off infinitely plastic and is formed completely by the society in which he grows up. The same point being reiterated. There is no end to the possible variations among cultures. So again the author says like all the humans within the cultures do not behave in the same way, exactly in the same way, because there are different possible variations among the cultures and all. So there is still some scope of different behaviors developing in different cultures and stuff like that. What we take to be human instincts are just the deep dug prejudices of our own society. So here the argument is in favor of blank paper. You basically saying whatever we consider as the human instincts, right, are basically the deep dug prejudices of our own society. So it's basically deeply inside the society behavior. So everyone is getting to see the same behavior coming because we're all growing in societies. Forming families, fearing the dark and jumping at the sight of a spider are just the results of our conditioning. So it's again arguing the same thing, that we might feel that okay, humans have fear of dark in general, that's because that's human behavior or something. Our forming families is part of human behavior, right? Our jumping at the sight of a spider are just the results, are part of. No, this argument of blank paper view says that these are not part of our instincts or something like that. These are just part of our conditioning. We are growing with these thoughts in our mind that okay, we are bound to form families. I'm supposed to get married, I'm bound to form families, and etc. Existentialism at first appears a very different standpoint, because the existentialist asserts man's freedom and will not let him call himself a product of anything. So this point basically says that existentialism says everyone has a freedom, right? Whatever the behavior that shapes up in a person is basically based on his experiences and his own understanding and his own willpower. So if you look at the first part of this blank paper view, it says that it's entirely product of the culture. It's sort of blaming or putting the role of an external party, that's society and culture, that's shaping our humans' behavior in a way, which is what the existentialism will not agree. And that's what the author says. At first appears a very different standpoint, because existentialist asserts man's freedom and will not let him call himself product of anything. That's basically in a way the blank paper view saying that we are product of our society and culture. But existentialism too denies that man has a nature. So that's basically existentialism also denies that we have instincts or human nature, which is given to us over generations or something like that. If he had his freedom, would not be complete. So if he had a nature or instincts, that is certain behaviors are set by birth as a human, we would bound to behave in such a way. If that is existing, then his freedom would not be complete. That's what the argument is. So thus Sartre insisted that there is no human nature. Man first of all exists, encounters himself, surges up in this world, grows in this world and defines himself afterwards. So that's basically again continuing saying that Sartre insisted that there is no human nature, no instincts. Man exists first of all, encounters himself, sees things, experiences things, grows in this world and defines himself based on his experiences and what he has seen in life. If man, as the existentialist sees him, is not definable, it is because to begin with he is nothing. So it's basically, as we have been talking, that all these theories of existentialism, blank paper use says that man does not have any nature or does not come pre-programmed in any way. He is born as nothing, as a zero, and he will grow and build things, his behaviors, his attitudes as he grows up. He will not be anything until later, and then he will be what he makes himself. Right? He will not be anything until later, and then he will be what he makes himself. So that's again continuation of the same logic. For existentialism, there is only the human condition, which is what happens to man and not what he is born like. So again the same point being discussed, that existentialism, there is only human condition, that is how he is growing, what he is experiencing, which is what happens to him and not what he is born like. There is nothing to do with he is born with something like that. If we are afraid of the dark, it is because we choose to be cowards. If we care more for our children than for other people's, it's because we choose to be partial. Right? So these points, so this argument continues saying that the fear of darkness, love towards our own family, etc., is not instinct or human nature or animal behavior. It's more about how we have decided to be something like being partial, etc. Right? So this theory starts to justify all these things, saying that it is nothing to do with the nature, instinct or anything. It's just that we have decided to do so and so. That's how the society is behaving, or maybe we are conditioned, or we have decided to do on our own. We must never talk about human nature, human instincts. This implicit moral notion is still very influential, not at all confined to those who use the metaphysic of essence and existence. This is a slightly complex line. So it says that metaphysic of essence and existence. This is metaphysics is also another philosophy. So that's where there is the mixer of the reality and the abstractness of the world. So it's slightly complex to discuss, but let's continue ahead. So I shall sometimes speak of it not as existentialist but as a libertarian, meaning that those holding it do not just, like all of us, think liberty important, but think it supremely important and believe that our having a nature would infringe it. Right? So let's read this line again. So I shall sometimes speak of it not as existentialist but as libertarian. So the author is saying that sometimes I speak of it not as existentialist but as libertarian. So there are two different philosophies. Libertarian is about having freedom. That's a philosophy that I should have freedom to decide what to do and etc. So it says sometimes, so I speak of not as existentialist. So author is sort of giving a hint that he is an existentialist, but he is not arguing sometimes as existentialist but more of a libertarian, meaning that those holding it do not just think liberty is important but think it is supremely important and believe that our having a nature would infringe it. So here the author continues saying that if, as I said, libertarian or liberty philosophy is basically saying that the person should have freedom to do whatever he or she wants. So it says that if we have nature which is passed down to us as humans, right, it is sort of stopping us from having complete freedom to do. If let's say the nature says, human nature instinct says that I am bound to get married and have kids, right, that is how the humans should behave, but that is sort of stopping me from having my freedom to decide what I want to do. So that is what the author is saying, that sometimes not as existentialist, just as a libertarian, right, I feel that it is supremely important to have freedom and believe that our having a nature would infringe it. Infringe it is basically that I would be deprived of having my freedom, right? It would be crossed. So yeah, that's how this passage is. It's super difficult to read, at least I would put it at a difficult level, not super, unless you are into psychology, understand the philosophies and stuff. Right, so let's get to look at the question. Now what I will suggest is pause the video again and try and see if you want to change your answer, because I've now explained this whole passage. I guess you would have a better understanding of things if you did not have complete understanding earlier, right? So you can rethink the question and answer this question again after what we've discussed till now. So I guess you have paused the video and have checked the options again and have selected whatever the right answer you felt is the right answer. So let's look at the question. Which of the following statements would the author agree with most? Right. So you see the options: existentialism and liberty. So sort of three options I see on the same line. So let's read them. Existentialism can be extended to libertarianism. That's one, which sounds like a decent option for me now. Look at the next. Existentialism, libertarianism are the same, which is a bit extreme. I don't agree with this. Why? Because the author says, so I shall sometimes speak of it not as existentialist but as a libertarian. So it says like existentialism and libertarian are slightly different, at least. If not, I at least can confidently say that they are not the same. Even if you don't understand what existentialism is and libertarianism is, from just this line, so I shall sometimes speak of it not as existentialist but as a libertarian. If they are same, then the author will not make this line, right? So at least I can eliminate it based on this line. The D option says liberty and existentialism are unrelated. This also looks a bit, not really going along with this point of, as I explained, existentialism is basically the philosophy of how humans' nature is shaped up based on his experiences. He has the freedom to develop in his own life, his or her own life, but through willpower and experiences, they decide how they shape their behavior. Libertarianism basically says to have liberty or the freedom to do what they want in life. So there is sort of some relation, and this line also gives us that, right, a bit of that. Supremely important to have the liberty is very important, and it is supremely important. If we are having nature, a human nature part of our life, it sort of infringes this. So I'm not really convinced on this part, but let's keep this aside, right? I will still go with A, but let's keep A and D now. Animal behavior should not be compared with human behavior. This, the author, this is a trap, okay? It might look like here there are two theories. One theory says that animal behavior, compared with human behavior and all of that. The blank paper you sort of makes us feel that, it should not be compared. But here we do not clearly know whether the author is completely arguing in favor of blank paper or is like the blind follower of it. I would say this is sort of a complex option to select it, because we do not have a direct claim at any point of place in the passage where the author is sort of saying that he completely believes in blank paper view. He is rather putting that there are two arguments or two philosophies which are contradicting, and it's sort of both are influential and it's sort of contradicting. That's why we cannot select this option. So I would go with the A, option A. Existentialism can be extended to libertarianism because there is a little bit of overlap. Like as I said, if you understand existentialism and libertarianism, you'll find the option A to be more convincing. The option D are unrelated, sort of makes it, unrelated is the word which I'm not convinced about, right? They are a bit related. That's what even the author is trying to say in the last line. So, to answer this question, actually, you don't need to really look through everything given. If you understand the last two lines clearly with a good sense of what's the whole passage about, I think you can answer this question. But yeah, what I wanted to show in this is this. The options might look like easy to understand. The question might look very easy to understand what the question is talking about. But if you don't really understand the passage, you find everything very complex and complicated to really attempt, right? That is what I wanted to show in this passage. Now I'll show you another passage. This is the passage sample 2, where we have the passage which is very easy to read and understand, but the question is a bit tricky, right? So let's do the same thing again. Pause the video, read the passage, attempt the question. After that, I'll discuss the same thing. So I hope you have paused the video and have read the passage and attempted the question. So let's get started. So, do sports mega events like Summer Olympic Games benefit the host city economically? It depends, but the prospects are less than rosy, right? So this passage starts with a question. So all the Olympic Games, would they actually benefit the host economically, right? So the answer says it depends, but the prospects are less than rosy. So it's not really on the positive side. The trick is converting several $1 billion in operating costs during the 17-day fiesta of the games into basis for long-term economic returns, right? So the author says the trick is that a lot of money is being spent for those 17-day games that needs to be converted into a basis for long-term economic returns, right? Not just for the 17 days. The return should actually, the economic return should come over the years. That's how the plan should be. These days, the Summer Olympic Games themselves generate total revenue of 4 billion to 5 billion, right? But the lion's share of this goes to the International Olympic Committee, the National Olympics Committees, and the International Sports Federations. So the author is giving a fact. It's a simple thing to understand. 4 to 5 billion dollars money is being made, but majority of the share goes to these committees: International Olympics Committee, National Olympics Committees, and the International Sports Federations. Any economic benefit would have to flow from the value of the games as an advertisement for the city, the new transportation and the communications infrastructure that was created for the games, are the ongoing use of the facility, right? So the last line of the passage says that any economic benefit is not really coming out from this 4 to 5 billion dollars. Rather, that should come from the games as advertisement for the city. If you know it's happening in Tokyo, the next Olympics, it will be a big advertisement for them through tourism and stuff like that. The new transportation and the communications, that they would have spent a lot of money to build the transportation and communication infrastructure, that should at least reap benefits for them over years. And that's what are the ongoing use of the new facilities. All the new stadiums and the buildings that they have constructed, they at least should actually generate revenue in the long run for the country or the economy. That's what this passage is talking about. The question is, the central point in the first paragraph is that the economic benefits of the Olympic Games, right? So we just need to pick up the key theme or the key point the author is trying to make in this passage, right? So, are shared equally among the 3 organizing committees. So this is sort of looking like a correct statement based on what we have read, but there is one trap in this: shared equally. This one is not something that the author has claimed. The author said that the games generate total revenue of 4 to 5 billion dollars, but the lion's share of this goes to these 3 committees. So that means majority of it goes to these 3 committees. Nowhere the author is mentioning that it's equally shared among the 3 organizing committees. So this is definitely an incorrect statement. It is not even a correct fact as per the passage. Accrue mostly through revenue from advertisements and ticket sales. This is also another trap which looks like the economic benefits of the Olympic Games. It's answering that it can be accrued through revenue from the advertisements and the ticket sales, and sort of people who do not really understand would go with this advertisement for the city as a convincing point to ticket. But the point is this: the author here said that it should be, benefit would have to flow from the value of the games as advertisement for city, the new transportation, communications, etc., are ongoing use of facilities. So here the advertisements and the ticket sales, this is a big no, right? There's nowhere the ticket sales are talked about. So that's like absolutely wrong point being added, and that's why it cannot be correct. So the economic benefits of the Olympic Games accrue to host cities, if at all, only in the long term. This looks like a valid point, right? Because the passage is talking about making money on the long run, right? So it starts with the question that does these games actually benefit the host city economically, right? Then it goes about its trick is converting lot of money into a basis for the long-term economic returns, right? That's what it says, that it accrues to host cities, if at all, only in the long term. This looks like a decent option to keep. Let's read the other option also: are usually eroded by the expenditure incurred by the host city. This is not something that's being talked. Yes, it says that a lot of money is being spent on those games, but it's nowhere written that the money that's being made is being eroded by the expenditure incurred by the host city. This is also an incorrect statement. So the only correct option left is C. That's why C is the correct answer. Right, you see this one, the passage is super easy to read, but the options have, you know, a good amount of traps being added to them, which sort of makes us, you know, take incorrect answers if we do not read things properly and understand them. So this is an example which we tried to show that the passage could be easy to read and understand. It is in a simple English, very comfortable to read and understand every line, but the options are a bit, you know, tricky. That makes it a little bit difficult thing to get it correct. So let's look at different approaches to solve RC, and you know, what's the optimal one according to us. The first approach, I guess most of us would be trying, you know, one of these three approaches, or maybe would have tried multiple approaches at different stages of our life. First approach is reading the passage slowly, understand it completely, and then move to the questions and answer them. You know, the problem with this according to us is that sometimes you might spend a lot of time to understand the passage, right? And then the whole point of understanding it completely, that you reread each line if you are not understanding it, and then you move to the questions, and there's a good chance that you forget where a particular point is. You have to recheck this passage, I mean the relevant parts of it you have to recheck again, sort of you check them again, because you would not be remembering word by word even if you read it slowly and understand it completely. The problem with this is that it's good that you understand the passage and go to answer the questions. That would help you to get the answers most probably correct, but the problem is that you spend a lot of time and there could be a chance that the questions could be tricky and difficult as well, which means that you spend 5 to 10 minutes to read the passage, understand it completely, and then you realize that the questions are difficult, and most probably you might face the challenge of getting it, you know, correct. The second approach is jumping into the questions directly without reading the passage. So you see the question 1, you see, okay, this passage is talking about some words, so let me check where these words are in the passage. Okay, you read that particular part closely again and again and get the relevant you know, points, and then maybe answer them. So this might work if the passage has most probably fact based, you know, specific detail based questions, okay, where you don't really have to understand everything in the passage, just read the couple of lines, and based on that you can just pick the right answer, which is a bit, you know, too much to expect. We will not see these type of questions in most exams, right? So it's much better to avoid this approach, especially if you get questions on main theme of the passage, summary of the passage, tone of the author, etc., etc., which would be completely, you know, difficult to be attempted without reading the complete passage and get a gist of it. Final approach is read the passage quickly, right? Do not spend too much on the details trying to get each and every minute point being touched by the author. Basically skim through the passage, right? Like let's say 300-400 words, you spend a couple of minutes, less than that, 1 to 2 minutes based on the length of the passage. So basically, you know, an average reader reads around 200 words per minute. You know, that's the reading speed. Most of us would be worried about reading speed. You can check your reading speed by just googling you know, speed read test. You'll get a couple of resources to check your speed. See your word, you know, just check your reading speed and also check your comprehension, how good you read and understand things. If you are too slow compared to this, right, I think that's where you have to be worried about. You don't need to be somewhere around 400-500 words per minute to be really, you know, acing the reading comprehension questions, irrespective of what exam you're looking at. It's good to be around 200 to 300, but most important part is about your comprehension, understanding, you know, percentage of understanding the content clearly. So skim through the passage. 300-400 words should take you around 1 to 2 minutes, right? Then jump at the questions, look at the question, and then you can easily go back to the passage and pick the relevant parts, because you have skimmed through, you got a gist of it, you got an understanding of what the passage is about and where the author has talked about so and so points. If the question is a specific detail based question, you can jump to that specific part in the passage, read it and read the details in depth right now, and then pick the right answer. If it is more on the gist of the passage, you can easily answer it in a much better way, because you have gone through the passage completely and, you know, got a good understanding of what the author is trying to, you know, talk about in the whole passage, right? If you have doubts, you can obviously reread it, but it's much better to go with this approach 3, where you skim through the passage, completely read it in 1 to 2 minutes, like if it's 300, 400 word, if it's 600, 700, maybe 3 minutes, then start looking at each question, and then, rereading the passage wherever it's relevant or wherever it's required, and answer the question. Right? These two approaches are strongly not recommended by us. We strongly recommend you to go with the approach 3. It will work for you irrespective of how much time you have for a particular, exam. Unless until you are super confident that the passage questions are straightforward, I just need to pick the relevant parts. Even then, just skim through in a minute so that you understand where you can find the specific words or specific details being discussed, so that you can check the questions and answer them accordingly. Do not spend too much of time on reading the passage and understanding them completely, because you might have to leave the passage after some time. Maybe you will fall short of time, you might not be able to complete the whole questions, or maybe you feel that it's difficult, let me try some other passage, right? So just make sure that you don't over invest your time in reading and understanding, or do not avoid completely from reading and just jumping into the questions directly. Pick the approach 3. Try this approach yourself for 2 to 3 sets, and slowly, if you are not convinced, and I guess you will be slowly convinced on the impact of this approach. So now let's look at this matrix. We call it reading comprehension matrix. Does it really help you to answer these questions directly? No, I would not say so, but get a good understanding of this. This is like a little bit of science that we have developed, so that it will help you to avoid certain set of questions, passages, pick the easy ones, and optimize your time. Let's say if you have 30 minutes and you have 50 questions to answer and you have to optimize your performance, right? It's always best to have some sense on what to touch and what not to. And that is what we are trying to do with this matrix, with respect to the reading comprehension questions. So it's a 2 by 2 matrix. You have question difficulty, right, on one side, and then we are talking about the passage difficulty on the other side. So you might find a passage which is very easy to read and get very easy question on that, right? That is this part, must attempt. You should not miss those questions, miss those passages, because it's super easy to read. You'll read it faster, you understand things much easier, and then you get a very easy question from it. You should not miss such an easy offer to get a good score. Sometimes you find a very easy read, but the question could be difficult, right? So that means it's very easy to attempt in a way for you. Like you feel like, okay, I read the passage, kind of understood things. Now you'll see the question, you look at the options. Even though the options are a bit tricky, you'll force yourself to pick one. But, the chance of getting correct answer is low. The accuracy would be low, in this case. If you have a good accuracy, that's good. That means you do not find this difficult. So this is not an absolute easy and difficult question sort of a spectrum. You will have medium questions, slightly easy and more difficult things, but we're just giving you a sense that try to understand. If you get an easy passage, do not miss reading it and look at the questions, whatever you find them, whichever you find are easy, to definitely attempt them. That should be your priority. Then difficult questions, just make sure that how good your accuracy is. That is something you have to check and understand based on your practice of different RCs, and you can guess how good you are with respect to your accuracy in attempting a difficult question from an easy read. Now you can get a difficult read but easy question, right? That means the passage is very difficult to read and understand, but the question is easy. So once you have a decent understanding of the passage, or sometimes even if you don't have complete understanding, you might find it very easy to just refer to the relevant parts and mark the right answer. So this might take a bit of time, right? Because you have to read the passage, reread a bit of it, and find the correct parts and answer the question. But because the question is easy, you will most probably get the right answer. The accuracy should be very high for this, right? So what we'll recommend is this should be your next priority. The top priority is this, the next priority is this, the third priority is this. This is assuming that you have less time and you can only attempt limited questions. So just if you try to optimize your performance by attempting as many questions as possible and getting as many correct as possible, right? The last category to look at is this, difficult to read and the question is also difficult, right? Which is something which is sort of makes everything difficult for us. Already you have to spend a lot of time to read and understand the passage. Then I look at a question and I find that it is very difficult to answer, or it's tricky to answer. I'm confused with multiple options. So the chance of getting it right is low, right? So low accuracy, lot of time investment, it should be your least priority. So how can I develop the judgment of picking easy and difficult questions? First and foremost, understand what is easy for someone might not be easy for someone else. Like we have different types of questions. We'll discuss about that in another video. But you have to look at these type of questions, practice different RCs, from which you have to look at your accuracy, look at your strong areas and weak areas, and get a sense of which type of questions are easy for me, which type of questions are difficult for me, right? Based on which you can actually attempt the questions. So this one, easy question, difficult question, the judgment might vary from person to person, right? An easy read and difficult read also. If you are comfortable with, let's say, history topic, you might find a history read as an easy one, but someone else might find it difficult, right? So just keep this in mind. It varies from person to person, but based on what you feel something as easy read and the question is easy, do not miss those questions, right? That should be your priority. And similarly, easy read and difficult question, difficult read but easy question, pick that as your priority. Then the difficult, try to avoid them unless you have time, you want to attempt, then you can go for that. That is this whole matrix. So the agenda of it is to actually help you to understand what type of questions to be picked, how to optimize my performance within the given time. Finally, the only way to improve in RC is to practice, right? As I said, there are two skills that you have to develop. One, read more and more so that you can improve your reading speed and comprehending ability. Newspapers, pick Hindu, Live Mint, etc., or Economist, Economic Times, etc. Magazines, read mostly editorials if possible, right? You can read anything. Reading anything and everything is good, okay? It's not that it's not useful or anything per se. As long as you read anything in English, it should help you, improve your reading speed or reading ability in general. If you read editorials, it would help you a bit more, because editorials basically also talk about the topics which are not, very standard for us, or which are not our comfort areas, and those are the type of articles that are generally picked for the RCs. Magazines, read Economist, New Yorker, right? You can find them, they also have websites. They do let you read articles for free as well. You can just check them and read them. There's a good website, Arts and Letters Daily. You can just Google it. They do collect all good editorials on diverse topics from different sources. This is an amazing source to really pick, and if you read, you can read only from this and get things done, okay? There are many articles and editorials to pick and read from diverse topics. So this is more than enough for any of us. Finally, if you are someone who does not have the habit, or if you have the habit of reading books, it's not just about cracking a particular exam. If you have the habit of reading these things, right, your ability to use English, your ability to understand English, as well as your general knowledge would really improve, right? Your ability to think through things and stuff. I strongly recommend people to get into the habit of reading books if you don't have the habit already. These are some good books that are good to start if you do not have the habit of reading books, right? Finally, I would say read more, right? As I said, does not matter if it's just for this particular exam you're looking at. What I strongly recommend is, it's a very, very good habit to have in life, right? So do not stop it. If you do not have this habit, pick it now. There's nothing wrong in starting at any point of time in life, irrespective of what you have done till now in life. Do start reading books, reading these magazines and all. It could be your interest areas, okay? For exams, it's good to touch diverse topics. I'm not asking you to do it forever, but pick your interest areas and keep reading different books, keep learning from the best minds across the world, and it will always help you to do better in life. Then the practice more part. So you have different resources to practice RCs, right? If you are looking at an exam where it's with RCs of easy to medium level, start with the bank exam papers, SBI PO, SBI Clerk, IBPS PO, IBPS Clerk, etc. SSC CGL Tier 1 papers, old papers, UPSC CSAT prelims, right? There are many questions you can find online. When it comes to medium to hard level, you can look at MBA exam papers like CAT, XAT, GRE, GMAT resources that you can Google and find. They're amazing, to practice. You can also find the RC practice course available for free in our own, partners website, gtcube.com/store. Do check that out. You will get to practice, a lot of RCs of different difficulty levels of different topics. Finally, we just want to say that Rome was not built in a day. So you will not be able to develop your skills overnight. It will take a little bit of time, but it's worth your effort and time, irrespective of, it's not just for a particular exam you're looking at. On the whole, it's really helpful for you in your life if you're able to improve your ability to read things, efficient manner, faster manner, and can think through things. So thank you for watching this video. Do check out free courses available in our partner store, gtcube.com/store. If you're watching this video on our YouTube channel, do definitely check out the courses that are available. You'll get to practice a lot of questions and analysis that would really help you to improve your performance. Also, do like our partner's Facebook page, facebook.com/gtcube3. You'll get a lot of updates on various courses that would help you to crack your exams. Thank you for watching this video, and let's meet in the next video.